Azuz, and I spy something awesome. It's Friday, and we're happy to have you watching as CNN 10 wraps up another week of news. Today's Down the Middle coverage starts with a look at new tariffs, which are like taxes that the U.S. is placing on certain imports. We've talked about the Trump administration's previous tariffs on steel, aluminum, solar panels, and washing machines. The new ones that U.S. President Donald Trump is putting in place are on about $50 billion worth of imported goods from China. The tariffs will be on everything from electronics to clothes, so it'll be more expensive for China to sell these items in America. It's a sort of punishment on China for what the U.S. says are unfair trade practices that never should have been allowed by previous American leaders. President Trump says he thinks of China as a friend, but that the trade deficit that the U.S. has with China, the fact that America imports far more goods from China than it exports to China, is unacceptable.
It is the largest deficit of any country in the history of our world. It's out of control.
Some economists are afraid this could start a trade war when countries increase restrictions on one another's products and prices rise. And the U.S. stock market dropped yesterday significantly, partially because some investors were concerned that would happen. The Trump administration says the new tariffs would only have a small effect on Americans, but an expert in international trade says Americans will end up having to pay more for everyday items. And a Chinese government official says a trade war does no good to anyone, that there is no winner. The tariffs won't take effect immediately. It'll probably be more than a month before they're in place. Next story today, the Toyota Motor Company says it's temporarily stopping its tests of self-driving cars. The Boston Department of Transportation has asked autonomous car companies to pause testing there, and the Uber transportation company says it stopped testing self-driving cars throughout the U.S. and Canada. This all follows an incident that happened on Sunday in Tempe, Arizona. That night, a self-driving Uber SUV hit and killed a pedestrian. The victim was walking her bicycle across a road when she was struck by an autonomous Volvo. Police say the pedestrian was not using a crosswalk and that there's also no indication that the self-driving vehicle slowed down beforehand. It was traveling at about 40 miles per hour. Uber says it's fully cooperating with the police investigation and that the company's hearts go out to the victim's family. This isn't the first crash of a self-driving car, but it is believed to be the first time someone was killed by a fully autonomous vehicle. The SUV did have a test driver inside, a person there as a safeguard, but the car was in self-driving mode when the crash occurred. Police say there were no signs that the test driver was impaired in any way after the collision. The state of Arizona doesn't get a lot of rain. It's a popular place for self-driving car tests. Arizona's governor updated an executive order earlier this month, before the crash, that allows self-driving cars to use state roads without a test driver. 10-second trivia. What is the driest place on Earth? Sahara Desert, Atacama Desert, Pelican Point, Namibia, or Dry Valleys, Antarctica? As their name suggests, Antarctica's dry valleys have extremely low humidity and almost no snow or ice to cover them. An international campaign's been launched to create a massive sanctuary, a protected area in the oceans around Antarctica. But that would make fishing there illegal, and that's part of the reason why efforts like this have failed in years past. According to the environmental group Greenpeace, the international fishing industry has been using these waters to catch krill. These animals are like tiny shrimp. They're an important food source for the animals around Antarctica. The krill are also important to people as they can be used in oils, supplements, and pet food. We don't know yet whether the international community will agree to establish a new sanctuary, but we did get a close-up view of Antarctica.
It's an ethereal world that we wake up to our first morning in the Antarctic. That sort of harsh yet captivating mystical beauty, with penguins swimming and jumping in the waters right around our ship, the Arctic Sunrise.
It's so beautiful and quiet, you almost don't even want to speak above a whisper. And there's 2 whales right there. This is absolutely unbelievable. See them?
And as if the morning couldn't get more striking. We're in the first week of a month-long leg of a Greenpeace expedition that started in January, a campaign to build the case for the creation of the world's largest ocean sanctuary in the Antarctic, which is a vital carbon sink. And that's what we've come to learn more about, the Antarctic's potential to act as a buffer to climate change. We started off in Punta Arenas in Chile, before hitting the Drake Passage, notorious for its huge swells and rough waters.
It's day 4 and we're crossing through the Drake Passage, and we're lucky because by the Drake Passage's standards, these are actually really calm waters.
For many of the Greenpeace team on board and us, this is a first.
Yeah, I think it's a seal.
Before we head to shore, all equipment and clothing needs to be carefully cleaned.
It's quite interesting because when you look at it from the outside, it feels like it's this very harsh and robust environment, and yet it's incredibly sensitive.
It's really sensitive, especially for non-native species.
And we are off, heading towards Yankee Harbor.
Oh, it's so weird to be on land again. Look at the seals.
This tiny island, like the rest of the massive landmass in the Antarctic, is designated for scientific exploration and protected under the Antarctic Treaty. But that treaty does not extend to the Antarctic's waters, hence Greenpeace's mission. Even this region's most humorous of animals have their role in nature's equilibrium.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Marine biologist and Greenpeace campaigner Thilo Mack has been looking at the intricate links between these waters, its wildlife, and the fundamental role they play in Earth's carbon cycle.
If you look over there, they're trying to jump up on the ice. It's hilarious.
Yeah, they're really cute. That's true. Yeah, it's the Antarctic is a cooling chamber that mitigates the effects of climate change, and what happens here is having an effect on the climate of the planet. The ocean currents are driven by the cold waters of the Antarctic.
And the wildlife is central to driving carbon-rich biomass to the depths of the dense cold ocean waters, where it is then stored for millennia, if it's left undisturbed. There are still many unknowns, and the more scientists uncover, the more questions arise. But there is no doubt about the harmony here, one whose preservation is potentially linked to our very existence. Arwa Damon, CNN, the Antarctic.
We're sending you into the weekend with a slingshot. It's a thrill ride, and the Florida State soccer player on the left looks a lot more thrilled about it than the Florida State soccer player on the right. Maybe Megan Connolly was unhappy to be here at first, but that's nothing compared to how unhappy she was when the ride launched. Her reaction, which is nothing short of sheer terror, is why this video was shared all over social media. Predicting how people would react as a slingshot in the dark. To Megan, maybe this seemed more like an unamusement park ride. But after getting roped into something that likely stretched her concept of fun, at least she wasn't held in suspense. And thankfully afterward, she was able to bounce back. We're riding off into the weekend on CNN 10. Hope you'll bounce back with us next Monday.